Hello, welcome back to another episode of Just Existing. I don't know what number it is. I'm sure it's in the title, but today's episode also mentioned in the title. We're talking about no friends, but in high school, and we're giving advice, right? Actually, I was supposed to do another video about how to be hot and confident and blah, 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 blah. But I actually had a parent come into my comment section asking for advice regarding their daughter who is 15, who has autism and ADHD. I think that is what it is, or at least it was ADHD. I think it was also autism, and just like she's struggling to make friends. She hasn't had a real friend, and she was just asking for advice, and obviously I responded, but I felt like a paragraph or two wasn't enough, so I thought I would make this video where I also acknowledge it, but I also make it a little bit more generalized as well. So I'm sure, hello, I'm sure your parent has put me on the television, and I'm hoping you're having a lovely day. So I hope this advice will also help you and also other teenagers across the world. Okay, so here's the funny thing that I've realized, right? People love to mention how mean adults can be, but never how unintentionally cruel teenagers can be. And obviously you get ones that are intentionally cruel, like the bullies and stuff like that. But I feel like everyone that is an adult that was a teenager had an instance where they were intentionally cruel to someone and didn't know that they were. And I'm sure as a teenager you might have already experienced that one moment, or you might have one coming up, right? And I feel like as a teenager, I don't think people mention how traumatic it is to go as a child to then becoming a teenager, because you could have the most perfect life, perfect family, no trauma in your childhood, but to go from childhood to a teenager to basically you are going through puberty, that is already a mess in itself. You're going through bodily changes, you're going through emotional mood swings, you're having these ups, you're having these lows, these highs, just everything, right? And it's an interesting time of life, because just everything is just all up in the air, right? You're trying to understand these. You're going through this phase where it's I hate you, mom, I hate you, dad. You don't actually hate them, but if you didn't have that phase, I'm sure you're every parent's dream. Not to be rude or anything. I went through a really bad phase where I was F you, mom, F you, dad, don't like you. Obviously now my parents and my mom and I we're stuck together. We're besties. But, and I feel there's also a lot of pressure in high school just regarding society and social pressures, right? And having friends is a really weird one too, because people will view you as weird if you don't have friends, especially in high school. If you're an adult, no one really gives a crap, because you're all going through your own life. But in high school, when you are spending at least 8 hours a day with these 100 and something, even more students in your year level, word spreads around fast. Teenagers don't really have much to do other than to gossip and play down ball or something. They don't have a lot of things to do. Sorry, just give me a second. I'm just having a sip. But I wanted to give you a general gist of what my childhood was like, right? From the age of 6 to the age of, it was about year 10, so I was 16, a couple of months shy from turning 17, because my birthday's at the start of the year, right? So obviously I dropped out at the end of the year, right? I'm gonna give you a general gist of what my school life was like, right? From those 10 years, I went to probably about 8 to 9 different schools, which is insane, right? The first school I went to, I was there for a term. I was 6 years old, and I literally had, I got bullied. I had no friends. I experienced what it was like the first moment I got into school. I knew what it was like to be friendless, man, because I got bullied by this teacher's niece. She was incredibly cruel. I remember crying my art class because she said that my drawing was really shit, and it wasn't even just it was shit. She went really hardcore at it, and it was just horrible, right? My mom ended up moving somewhere else within the state. I went to a new school. It took me about a couple of months to make friends, and once I made one friend, it kind of compounded, and I just made more friends over time, right? I was at that school till about year 3, and then my mom moved somewhere else when I was in year 3. She spent 40 minutes one way, just one way, so it was about what's that, like an hour and 20 minutes a day, driving me to school, and it got too much for her, so we ended up moving to a different school in year 4. And year 4, it took me a couple of months to make friends because, like, I had a really hard time fitting in, right? I had a really hard time fitting in with, like, the other girls in my year level, and it was just one of those sort of things. But I made friends, and then I was there till about the end of year 6, and year 6, I got, like, pretty severely bullied by my best friend. I had made, like, a guy best friend, and he just started bullying me out of nowhere, and I ended up developing anxiety over it, right? Now, mind you, like, remember this, the last, like, 6 years, I have had autism. I've had autism my entire life, but I won't get diagnosed till I'm about 19, right? So, like, I'm masking really well, but I'm struggling really badly with social, like, cues and stuff, like, extremely, right? I go to a new school in year 7. I had a really hard time. I ended up sort of, like, fitting in with this cliche of, like, they weren't mean girls, but they were kind of bitchy, kind of bratty, and they were kind of mean, but not like they would outright bully anyone. They were just incredibly blunt and kind of cruel in a way. And I ended up having some beef with them, and I ended up moving, and I had no friends in that class. And then I ended up making friends a couple of months after that, and I would hang out with this friend group every single recess and lunch, even if they were in a completely different, like, class to me. They were in the same year level as me, but a completely different class. And my mom ended up, like, the next year, year 8, telling the school, be like, look, she has no friends, her friends are in a different class, can you please move her? Like, you've done it for another girl, can you please do it for, you know, Allie? And it took a bit of push and pull from my mom, but I ended up moving into this class, and I made some friends. And, you know, I had a really hard time making friends outside of this one group that I was a part of, right? But I ended up wanting to move schools at the end of that month, right? So I ended up, year 9, moving to a new school. It is when, like, everything just took a turn. Like, all of my mental illness just, like, compounded. And I went to a new school where they had no, like, they didn't, like, show you where to go. They didn't buddy you up with anyone if you were new. They just could not give a crap about you, but they were, like, a massive public school, right? And it was terrible. Like, it was horrific, right? I ended up, like, just developing, like, severe anxiety, social anxiety. My autism was showing really badly, but, like, I didn't get diagnosed for another, like 4 years after that. And I just struggled really, really badly at this school and adjusting and the transition, and it was just too much for me, right? So, and I lived too far away to go back to my previous school. Like, I was out of the zone now. So, my mom ended up moving me to this, like, school for, like, special kids. Like, if you had, like, a mental illness or if you were disabled, you went to the school. And I obviously went there because I was struggling really badly with my mental health. And I had no friends at that new school I went to. And then I moved to this school, and I also had 0 friends at this school. And it was only a class of 4 kids. So, like, do you think it wouldn't be hard to, like, make friends with at least one of them? Because it's that small. You have to talk to one another. I struggled so badly to fit in. And I was low-key bullied by a 13-year-old when I was 15. Like, and I didn't want to hit her or anything because she was a couple of years younger than me. She didn't understand shit. But it bothered me. Right? Anyway, so I ended up moving, and I ended up going back to the school I went to when I was in year 7 and year 8. That friend group that I had in year 8, I don't think they excluded me, but I'm pretty sure they found someone else to fit that role that I fit in. So there was no more room for me anymore to go back to. So I was pretty friendless as well when I moved back. It was terrible. And I did become friends with these other girls, but I often felt very excluded. And then I ended up moving to, and I ended up literally dropping out that year, at the end of that year, because I just couldn't handle it. And then I obviously tried online school, and that didn't work. And obviously I'm now in uni, and you might be like, how did you get to uni if you dropped out? I ended up doing a course so I could actually go to uni. But now I'm in uni. Wow. So I'm sure that's given you a bit of gist, or, like, I've had periods where I've had friends. I've had periods where I've had no friends. I've had periods where, like, I just didn't fit in, but people still had me in their friend group. And it was just interesting, right? So it's interesting, right? And I think the issue is that I feel like a lot of people, especially when you are young, They put a lot of pressure on you to have friends, because if you do not have friends, you are weird. You are considered like low-key, I don't even like using this word, but this is what other kids have like mentioned it to me when I was in high school, like a freak because you don't have any friends. Like, why don't you have any friends? Like, why are you such a weirdo that no one wants to be around you? And I feel like people put such negative connotations on it, and it's just so bad, right? Like, you're not a weirdo if you have friends. You're not a weirdo, like, you're not a weirdo, you're not a loser if you have no friends, you're not a freak if you have no friends, right? I know I certainly wasn't, right? I was socially awkward, right? I was really awkward in general. I had a really hard time connecting with people, right? Because I had, like, autism, I had undiagnosed autism, and I had special interests that did not align with the general population, right? Kids in primary school loved ponies. They loved One Direction. I did not like either of those. I obviously pretended to fit in with those girls, but I did not like them, right? The stuff that I liked were coins. I liked collecting coins. I liked collecting stickers, you know? And, you know, those still followed me until I was, like, in high school. And obviously, when you're in high school, you're a weirdo. Like, why are you being so childish collecting stickers, you know? It's this thing where it's like, in high school, people view you as weird if you are still childish and they expect you to grow, but then they are incredibly cruel and don't allow you to be a child and make mistakes still, because you're expected to have this sort of like adult. And like, I'm a 23-year-old, right? I look back at like my 15, 16-year-old self, and I see myself as a baby still. I look at other 15 and 16-year-olds. They're children still. They're babies, you know? They think they're grown, and like, in a way, you sort of are. You are growing, but you are still very young and very impressionable, and, you know, and kids are incredibly cruel. And it's just this thing where it's like, people put so much pressure on kids to have friends, and I feel like people need to learn to be alone, to be by themselves, because if they feel this need to have constant friends in their life, to have constant people, and to appease and appeal to people, they are going to develop not very good relationships when they're adults, right? If you cannot learn to be by yourself and just enjoy the presence of yourself, you can develop really bad relationships in your adulthood. I would know that, right? I was in toxic relationships, friendships, and, you know, partnerships, because I did not want to be alone. I wanted so badly to be loved because I had 0 friends in high school, and the ones I did, you know, I struggled with. Or, you know, sometimes like my friends had really, like, they would be dating people and I would be jealous that no guys wanted me. And I remember thinking that I knew there was something off with me, but I never knew what. And I think as an autistic person, you can tell, right? Neurotypicals they can smell you a mile away, right? And that's what I often realize is a lot of times I struggled to make friends was because most of them were neurotypicals, right? And I struggled really hardly to make friends with neurotypicals because they could tell that you're awkward. They could tell you're not like normal, and they could just smell you from a mile away. And most of my friends now, sorry, I feel like I got something stuck in my throat. Like, I feel like there is something stuck in my throat. Like, when you're beginning to get sick. I swear to God, if my roommate's girlfriend got me sick, I'm gonna have a fit. Whew. My friends now, right, after spending ages trying to develop friendships and stuff, and I only made friends in my adulthood, like, that is also my advice. You might not make any friends in high school, and that is okay, right? I know it sucks in the moment, right? But I didn't develop my best friendships, the ones that exceeded the ones I had in high school, right? Until I was in my 20s, right? I'm 23 now. I think I got most of these friends when I was 20, 21. And a lot of these were ones where I was reconnecting with other people from my schools, right? I ended up reconnecting with some people that I had spoken to in high school. They're also ones that I can tell were like low-key not neurotypical, right? I think if you're neurotypical, it's a lot easier for you to make friendships with people who are also like neurodivergent, right? You are going to have a lot more of an easier time making friends with other females that are neurodivergent, that have ADHD, that have autism, even friends that have BPD, right? Like, I had so much of an easier time making friends, like myself as a neurodivergent, as an autistic woman, making friends with people that had mental illness, which is weird to say, but it is like, I felt like we were able to relate and connect in a way that we struggled with other neurotypicals, right? People that were quote unquote normal, right? I could tell them and be like, oh yeah, like this thing just really weirds me out. And they're like, oh my God, this thing also weirds me out. But like, if I had mentioned that to another like neurotypical, one that wasn't as empathetic and understanding, they would view me as weird and be like, why are you doing that? That is so weird, right? If I stimmed in public, they'd be like, what the hell are you doing? But like, if I did it with my friends that had anxiety even, or even like BPD or, you know, bipolar or stuff like that, they were a lot more understanding of my visual stims than anyone else, which is so insane, right? Anyway, let's get into the advice, because I've been following for the last 15 minutes, right? My advice for you, if you have no friends, right? One, you're not a loser, you're not weird, and you're not a freak if you have no friends, right? Like, you need to ingrain that into your head. Society, especially teenagers, will tell you that. You are not, right? You are not a weirdo, you are not a loser, and you're not a freak if you have no friends, right? That you have to ingrain that. You have to continuously tell yourself that every day, right? And to, like, as I mentioned, you might not, as sad as it sounds, like I had gone through a period of my time, I think from when I was 16 till about 18, where I had basically no friends, right? You might not have any friends till you're in your 20s. And the issue is you might actually develop friendships in your 20s where you're like, damn, I wish I knew these people earlier. Or damn, I'm so grateful that I get to have these people now. You know, all those hardships I went through my teenage years where I didn't have any friends, it was worth it because I got to meet these people, right? 3, right? Sorry. God. I think I am getting sick low-key. That scares me. As long as it's me not throwing up. I have a fear of throwing up, so I don't mind if I get the flu or something, as long as it's not me throwing up my guts, because that is traumatizing. 3, right? I think join clubs, right? And most people, when they think of clubs, they think of like sports clubs. Like, if you're not a sporty person, don't join a fucking sports club. Like, especially in America, you guys have like all of these clubs, after school clubs. I don't have that. Australians don't have that. We don't have after school clubs. We just have activities that you can go to outside of school that isn't included in your school, right? I think the only after school club that I had was a D&D club, and I wasn't invited. I remember as a kid being like, damn, why was I not invited? I hang out with these people all the time. Did they not want to invite me? I was devastated. But best thing to do is, look, sometimes you're just not going to fit in with the people at your school, right? You're sometimes just not going to fit in at all. And that sucks to hear. Like, I remember when I registered that, it devastated me, right? But sometimes you're not going to, right? And that is okay, right? So try to join other clubs outside of school, right? Stuff that's in different towns, right? Where you get to meet other people, right? Because sometimes you just won't get along with people at your school. Sometimes they're dicks. Sometimes those people at the school just suck, right? So it's good to like expand and like put your eggs in other baskets, right? Join other clubs in like a town over or in your current town. Like, I can guarantee you there are chess clubs, there are art clubs, there are stuff, right? Especially if you have like a very encouraging parent. Like, ask them to take you to clubs after school, right? That is the best things that you could probably do for your children, right? Like, what else? I'm trying to think. I would also say, right, like, it's not the end of the world. It feels like it. It generally feels like it's the end of the world because you have no friends and you're like, why am I so inadequate? Why am I so different that people don't want me around? Right? It won't be the end of the world. You will meet some amazing people. It may not be now. It might not be next week. It might take a couple of years. But you will meet some amazing people that actually understand you for you. And it's very hard to hear that, right? I have a really hard time, like, recognizing that till I made my current friendship groups. Like, it is so hard. Especially because my current friendship groups are so nice, because I always dreamt of having this friend group because I saw these other like groups at school where they would go hang out at a friend's place like every weekend. And now I have adult money and me and my friends literally go on like Christmas like weekend trips, where Christmas we'll spend like a couple of days going to like a beach town like a couple of hours away from us. Like, we'll actually spend like a good quality time together, and it's amazing. I love it. And would I even be able to do that in high school? No, because I was poor. But now I have no money and I can do whatever the hell I want, you know? And I have the choices to attend all these clubs, to do all these things, you know? And as I mentioned, I really think sometimes it is just a school, right? You're going to have a hard time. Like, if you have spent, like, if you're 15, right? If you're 15 and you have spent the last couple of years trying at the school, I sometimes think it's just the school. Like, it's not you, it's not anyone else. You know, I genuinely think sometimes it's just the school and the people that the school literally has. So, like, sometimes I just recommend, like, just joining other clubs. Join other clubs, expand, you know, try to, like, find something that you relate to. Because a lot of times when I would join clubs, I would sort of be just off to myself, just sort of, like, watching and listening to other people. You know, listen to them talk to other people, see what they're interested in, and be like, oh, okay, like, they really like gaming, okay. Maybe I'll come up to them later on and, like, just mention them and be like, hey, I overheard you talking that you really like gaming before. Like, I also like gaming. Like, what games do you like? You know? And people are more inclined to talk to you if you have a common interest. So if you can find that, find just one common interest and then expand upon that friendship, then you'll be able to, like, talk about other things that they might not be interested in. They'll talk to you about things you might not be interested in. But if you can find a common ground that you can relate to, it's also really good. And I know some people will recommend, right? Sorry. God. I know some people recommend bringing lollies to school or maybe moving schools, right? I have seen this time and time again when I was at my schools, where the easiest way to make friends, right? Hear me out, right? Is when you move schools, not at the start of the year, but sometime in the middle of the term. And then you bring lollies with you and you give them out to people. But the truth is, that is an easy way to make friends. But I wouldn't even say that you're friends. I would say that they're just trying to stay around you because you offer them something that they can't get, right? A lot of the times, especially where I was at, we had poor kids. You know, their kids didn't, like, their parents, like, were probably, like, low-key druggies and stuff like that. And we had a girl that moved midterm, and she was giving out lollies, and she always had candy on her, and everyone sort of swarmed her because she had candy. But I don't think she was ever truly their friend, because after she ended up moving, no one spoke to her. No one mentioned her. You know, it's the same thing as, like, you'll get, like, a really, really, really pretty girl that moves to a school, and at first everyone is really, like, fascinated by her and stuff like that. But it eventually fades because people are very materialistic, right? They really only want to be friends with you if you can give them something. Well, not all of them, but majority of them are, right? So obviously, if you can give them something that they can't get, they will obviously try to stick around with you. But once you end up leaving and you can no longer stay around, they'll end up just sort of, like, throwing you to the side, right? My friendship group that I had in year 8, I don't even think that was really the case because I didn't really offer them anything. But I think also because there were a couple of new kids that had moved while I was gone, and they had obviously fit into that group, right? And sometimes I think with friendship groups, when you remove someone, it means a role is missing. And so if you find someone else to fit that role, when that other person that was originally in that role comes back, there is no room to have two of the same people, right? So they will obviously not include the original person. I think that is what happened. I ended up getting replaced, and it was no one's fault. Like, I miss them. Like, I really appreciate, you know, they helped me make me who I am. And they were probably, like, my only really real, like, genuine friendship I had in high school, you know, besides a few other people, really. And they truly meant a lot to me. But yeah, I think sometimes you just don't fit in. Sometimes it's just a school. Sometimes it's just a multitude of reasons. I really think the best one to do is just don't be so hard on yourself if you have no friends. You know, don't view yourself as this terrible person. Don't, like, view yourself as a weirdo or anything like that. And just learn that eventually you're going to have friends. You don't know when. You know, life will get better, but we just don't know when, and that is the worst bit, right? Because you keep thinking, when am I going to get it? And it took me literally years to have this friendship group. But it also took me years to be content with me being alone by myself, because I did not like being alone. I would often seek terrible relationships or terrible friendships because I had craved not wanting to be alone. But also being alone for years has also taught me that, like, I actually enjoy my presence. You know, sometimes people are very dramatic and they love bringing drama into, like, everything. So it's nice to just be by yourself, because if you bring drama, you only have yourself to blame. But yeah, like, I truly think the best advice is not to be so hard on yourself. Like, it is okay. You know? It will get better. And I know people don't like that. And sometimes it maybe won't get better. But for me, I was in a constant state of depression and, like, anxiety for, like, fucking 10 years, man. Not 10 years. No, it would have been close to 10. I think it would be 10 years next year, man. That is sad. And I only recently, in the last probably year, started to actually get better and actually be content with what I am. You know, like, my mental illnesses and all that sort of stuff, and, like, my autism. Like, I really hated that I was autistic for, like, years. But I spent the last year just accepting that this is who I am, and I can't really change it. And it's also very exhausting trying to be someone that I'm not. So, like, if people don't like who I am, they can just go stuff it, you know? I don't think I'm a terrible person. Might be a little bit socially awkward and a little bit weird, but I'm not a terrible person. And so, if they don't like me for that, then that's really their issue. But, yeah, I think just being by yourself and just accepting that, you know, you just have to take one day at a time and things will get better. Like, it sucks. You know, and as I said, if you really want friends, try and join clubs outside of school. Try and join clubs. I know people love sports clubs, but fuck me, like, I am not a sports kind of girly. Well, no, I actually am a sports kind of girly. The guys at school hated me because I was so sporty. But there are other clubs, like arts and craft clubs. There's, like, literally chess clubs. There are so many clubs that you can do. Find something you want to do, or something that, like, there's, like, astronomy clubs. Like, I go to an astronomy club every Friday night because I love astronomy, right? There are so many things that you can do. If you have a good, encouraging parent, tell them that, and I'm sure they'll take you. If you don't, right, there are online spaces. Be careful with those online spaces, though, because there are weirdos. There are weirdos, and you know what, don't do online spaces, because there are weirdos, and we don't want that. I'll have to think of something that, like, people that their parents aren't encouraging that they can do. I'll think of something. I'll think of that in the next video. Anyway, since it's really late and it's nearly, like, 5 p.m, I'm gonna go head off to home. I hope you guys have a lovely day and a lovely afternoon. I really do hope you guys have a lovely day, okay? Thank you, and I hope you guys enjoy this advice, and I hope you have a lovely day. And hopefully we'll do another episode. Woo! Anyway, but goodbye.